Yeah.
My oldest was still a toddler, and we did an Easter egg hunt in the house.
Alrighty, it is now 9 a.m.
Found in mid-July.
Call this meeting to order, please. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. Seeing there's no other opening ceremonies, a roll call, if you please. Bonnie?
McAllister?
Here.
Flynn?
Here.
Walter?
Here.
Spence?
Here.
Henschel?
I'm here.
Nelson?
Here.
Andrews?
Here.
Morris?
Here.
Seifert?
Here. Fantastic. All right, so we're going to go to the first public comment before.
We need to do a,
They need to do what?
oh, I'm sorry. We missed approval of agenda last time, so I was just going to be really
I'm
vigilant.
glad somebody's looking out for me because God knows I need all the help I can
I'm
get
sorry.
over here.
Public comment first.
So first public comment, so we are going to have a public hearing on the septic, so if you're here to comment on that, please wait until such time to make your comments. Bonnie, if you read the rules, such as they are, that we're going to change as soon as you're done.
When are you going to change them?
I don't know. Not today, that's right.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board may state his or her name and township or district. Providing a specific address is not recommended. Persons may address the board on matters or issues which are relevant and germane to county government as determined by the chairperson. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, allow an additional opportunity or time to speak if determined germane and necessary to the discussion. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Order of Business. However, public comment may be received during the meeting when a specific agenda topic is scheduled for discussion by the board. Prior to the first public comment, the chairperson will indicate the topics on the agenda for which public comment will be accepted. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson. The board shall not comment or respond to a person who is addressing the board. Silence or non-response from the board should not be interpreted as disinterest or disagreement by the board. Please be respectful and refrain from personal or political attacks.
Thank you, Bonnie. So anybody else that'd like to speak this morning, go ahead, line up behind Justin. You don't have to raise your hand. Again, this is for anything but the septic ordinance. That will take care of shortly. Thank you.
Justin Reed, city resident. I'd like to let you know I went ahead and went to the last Northern Lakes Community Mental Health Board of Directors meeting. At that meeting, there was talk with this CEO search ad hoc, and I've never heard of like a salary not being discussed, especially going out for a CEO. Part of the problem and issue is there's a lot of issues with Northern Lakes Community Mental Health. A couple of a perfect storm with financials, with Medicaid and such. And it's not all the board of directors' fault. However, I'm kind of, if there is a allocation plan that's going forward to NMRE, what they want to know, especially a salary range for a new CEO for Northern Lakes Community Mental Health, because if NMRE says no, we don't want to go ahead and contribute because you don't have a cost allocation plan, then what ends up happening is there's no general fund for Northern Lakes Community Mental Health, and that ends up becoming a liability for Grand Traverse counties and the other 5 counties. And to me, I hear during that meeting that they're saying, oh, well, we need to go out for community support and everything else. You have a person who's supposed to be there. Crystal Frost Anderson has missed the last couple of meetings. And she is appointing through Grand Traverse County, and according to the rules, is 3 unexcused absences makes grounds for possibly seeking other appointments. Our clubhouse over at North Lakes did send for 2 months in a row emails out to the board of directors inviting them in, and out of that only 1 board of directors member showed up. And I can understand that they have other committees that they have to go to and such, but at least an email would say no would be honestly good. And maybe it's just because they don't want to show their faces to a program that might be going away, just because of all of the financial drawbacks. And to me, that's very concerning. And if they're talking about, well, we want to go out in the community, we want to do outreach and everything else, if they cannot go ahead and at least the bare minimum to go ahead and respond to an email. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Next, please.
Hello, my name is Susanna Tobin, and I'm a resident of Traverse City. First of all, I'd like to thank you for all the work you do on our behalf. I know it's a big job, and we appreciate it. I'm an architect and have focused my practice for the last 30-plus years on residential architecture, but I know what the design process is for any building project, and I'm really excited about the opportunity that the county has to start with the new facilities on the Franier, the Project Alpha. I'm here to speak about that. So I know that the design process involves establishing goals in the very beginning of the process, and I'm excited that this is the very beginning of that process. And I know if the goals are not stated in the beginning, then they won't ever really reappear. So I think it's important at this early stage of design development to prioritize energy efficiency. And I know that energy efficiency has 2 prongs: the building envelope, which we all understand in the world of construction as what is the R value of materials used. That's 100% important. But the second prong has to do with the building systems and how they operate and what they use to operate with. So I've done a lot of research in the last number of years, shifting my practice toward all electrification buildings. And what I've learned is shocking. I've learned that global fossil fuel emissions are responsible for over 40% of global emissions. The construction industry is responsible for over 40% of global fossil fuel emissions. Huge. So I decided, oh my gosh, what does that mean? It means that 1/3 of that 40% comes from everything it takes to build a building. The material production of, the extrication from land, the mining, the transportation, just whatever it takes to build the products that a building is built with, takes about 1/3 of that 40%. And the other 2/3 of that 40% come from the way the building is operated over its lifetime. And that's a big number. So 2/3 of a building has an opportunity to shift from a fossil fuel intense way of producing energy to heat and cool both the air and the water that we use in buildings. And now is that time. I've been on plenty of job sites. I know it's hard to change, but I feel that builders and HVAC contractors are beginning to understand that this is where the future is, and if they aren't open to shifting the way they have normally done things, then they will be left behind. The whole world is shifting in this regard. The United States is unfortunately in a little bit of a holding pattern relative to renewable energy production and our infrastructure. Okay, so thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, Tim Werner, city resident and member of the Traverse City Light and Power Board. I'm speaking about Project Alpha. I'm here to encourage you to do the math, not you as individuals to do the math, but have the math done and then have the math checked. because most folks, yeah, they're most comfortable doing what they're used to. So when you get the math, I would encourage you to work with staff at Light and Power, maybe some of the members of our community like Keene that know this stuff, if you will, and have them check the math. Have them ask the hard questions of the people that did the math, and then you'll be confident when you move forward with that, whatever path that might be. So I'm an advocate for decarbonization, but it has to make sense. And I think in this case, it's very likely that it will make sense. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Elizabeth Dell. I am a resident of Traverse City. I also want to thank you all for your hard work. I was walking over here and thinking about what a challenging job you all have, and I'm very grateful that we have folks who will step up and fill these roles, so thank you. I'm also here to speak about Project Alpha, which I've been following just a little bit, so I've been trying to learn more about what is happening with the project, and glad to be here today to learn more about it. My comment is very similar to Tim and Susanna's, that I'm very concerned about the building being as energy efficient as possible. I think this is the time for us to be really thinking hard about any infrastructure that we're building, that it be as sustainable as possible, that we reduce the fossil fuel use as much as possible, or eliminate any natural gas hookups if that's possible. And I'm really glad to see that that's something that's being considered in the building design, as well as the solar that you're looking at. And I realize that sometimes these can have additional costs. There's a lot of unknowns, but other parts of the world have been using a lot of these technologies, like direct air heat pumps, for example. And we're using them here now. There's a new building, the Keene Workshop, that has a direct air heat pump system that heats and cools the building. So these have been used for years, and they do work very well in our climate. And I hope that you'll consider those, and not just the additional costs, but what are those savings that we will see. And lastly, I would just say, Susanna didn't quite have a chance to finish, so I'm going to share what she was going to say, which I agree with. Governor Jay Inslee, who was the governor of Washington, said that we are the first generation to feel the effects of climate change and the last generation that can address it. We're close enough. She didn't quite finish writing it for me. So anyway, it's true. We have a responsibility for future generations, for my son, for your children, our grandchildren, to address this and to do all that we can now. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Any more for public comment on that? Going once, going twice. Thank you, everyone. So looking for an approval of the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
Mr. Hensel moved and supported by Commissioner Andrew for approval of the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Fantastic. All right, for discussion, 5A, the public hearing. So,
Good morning, Commissioners. Mr. Leahy, the Deputy Director of the Health Department, is here to provide a presentation to you on the septic ordinance and walk you through a public hearing.
is Cliff moonlighting?
There you go. Pardon me?
Says Cliff moonlighting.
Good morning, Board. Good to see everybody. Mike Leahy, Grand Traverse County Health Department.
Brent Wheat, Grand Traverse County Health Department Environmental Health Director.
We also have a few folks from our team here in the audience just to be some active ears for us during this public hearing and comment. So thank you to them. And I really want to thank just our team too, Mr. Wheat, for a lot of time spent on this. And we spent time in the details. So it was some work to get here to our first public hearing. And I want to thank our team that put some time and effort into really methodically thinking through what this could look like if we so choose to step into this in the county. So just wanted to kind of reset the table for the board in the community today as to why we're here. So we're here for a public hearing, a public comment session to address the potential regulation of on-site wastewater and sewage disposal inspection in the county of Grand Traverse. how we got here. So as you can see through this little timeline here, the Health Department has been in front of the board 4 times leading up to this to discuss this regulation in either regular meeting or in study session. We've also met 3 times leading up to this as an ad hoc committee to take a look at the language and put together what we think may be the best foot forward for a regulation in the community. Just a little brief overview again of who participated in that ad hoc committee. And I see some of those participants in the room here again this morning, so thank you to that active participation to the language. So just to kind of make sure we're positioned where we're supposed to be, we posted our first posting in the Record Eagle on April 6th to notify the public of this public hearing. Immediately following that, we posted the language to the regulation on our website, as well as physically outside of our environmental health division on Lafreniere Road. We also received a number of public comments from groups and individuals within the community. Last night I packaged those up and sent that to this board here so that they may have visual on those as we did at the local health department. As the language has been discussed here in meeting as well as posted, Mr. Wheat is here if we have any final questions about the language. I do view this as an opportunity for us to just actively listen at this time and receive those comments. So what we can and may do from here, just to help kind of set trajectory for the health department and this board if we so choose, is we are here at public comment. A tentative date has been discussed in May to have a adoption meeting. That was a regular meeting for you all at the board level. I think that was May 21st, up to us to determine if that may remain on the schedule as planned. If we hear enough public comment where we feel, either the health department or this board, that we need to make adjustments to the language, we can make those adjustments and move on to that adoption meeting, or we could make adjustments and have another public hearing to review that updated language. I believe that's a decision that this board can make and give that direction to the local health department. So with that said, we do have an effective date of January 1 within this language. If you have any questions for us leading up to public comment, or we can actively listen to our community here today and take those comments.
Any questions for Mr. Leahy and his crew?
Okay,
All right.
thank you very much.
So make official that we open public. I'm going to open the public hearing at right now at 9:18. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to speak on this, now's your chance. Just go ahead and line up at the podium if you would, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ann Sweeney. I'm a resident of Peninsula Township. Also, I'm chair of the Natural Resources and Environment Committee for the League of Women Voters, Grand Traverse area. Our League Committee on Environment has been studying the septic issue for over a year now, and we recognize the urgent need of our county that has for this septic system regulation, especially near our precious waters. Many others from our league are also in support here. I'd like this morning to commend the County Board of Commissioners on the progress they've made so far on the creation of a septic code regulation for Grand Traverse County, and to express appreciation to Mike Leahy and the Grand Traverse County Health Department staff for spearheading much of this work. You've all certainly progressed much farther towards creating a local septic code than our state legislature has in creating one for our state. Thank you again for pursuing this issue. We're hoping that we'll soon be joining our neighbors in Benzie and Leelanau County and having our own county septic code. It's especially important and seems an obvious need up here with our many inland lakes and rivers and, of course, our own sparkling waters of Grand Traverse Bay. Those on our Environment Committee and also the advocacy arm of the League of Women Voters Grand Traverse area offer our strong support for the environment and for this proposed septic regulation. The sooner, the better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dave Regal-Budo. I'm a resident of Garfield Township and also a member of the League of Women Voters. I am a retired groundwater geologist, and I'm here to voice my support for the proposed regulation that includes point of transfer inspection for septic systems. Thanks to the board for the work you do, for bringing the matter up to a vote in public hearing, and special thanks to the Health Department for its continued advocacy, expertise, and analysis during the preparation of the draft language. I support the proposed regulation, although I actually think that it doesn't go far enough, but I agree with many others that it's a positive step for the county. It begins to align us with some of our neighboring counties with more comprehensive regulation, and it gives us ramp-up time until the point where Michigan becomes the last state in the union to adopt a septic inspection law. I don't consider the regulation as it's written to be an overreach or an undue burden. On the contrary, I think everyone in the county and the state has a right to clean water, and therefore I believe it's everyone's responsibility to do what they can to protect the resource. Thank you for your time, and I urge the board to adopt the regulation.
Thank you for your comments.
Good morning. I'm Charlene Krieger, and I am a member of the League of Women Voters of the Grand Traverse area. And I thank all of you for the work that you've put in to creating this draft regulation. I live in Long Lake Township, and I'm very pleased that that township does have a point of sale, so that when a homeowner sells, they are responsible for having their septic drained and inspected. I was also a cottage owner for 50 years in another county, and I know from having spoken with many of the other owners around that lake that they had no idea about septic care and maintenance. And I urge you, for the good of the community and the good of our water, to please adopt this regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carrie Olmstead. I live in Garfield Township, and I'm also a member of the Grand Traverse Area League of Women Voters. Thank you for your hard work in developing this proposed regulation. Protecting our fresh water is important, and inspecting septic systems helps prevent surface water impacts. I support this effort and hope this regulation is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Christine Chrisman. I'm the Executive Director of the Watershed Center, Grand Traverse Bay. The Watershed Center advocates for clean water in Grand Traverse Bay and acts to help protect and preserve its watershed. Local governments play a key role in maintaining the health, safety, and welfare of their communities. Failing and improperly maintained septic systems can introduce nutrients, bacteria, viruses, pharmaceuticals, and other pollutants to our groundwater and surface water, which negatively impact the quality of our water and the health of our community. As you are aware, the more than 25,000 septic systems located in Grand Traverse County are not regulated by a statewide code requiring system maintenance. And as the state continues to grapple with enacting a statewide code, Progressively, more local governments are enacting point of sale or time of transfer ordinances to ensure septic systems in their communities are properly maintained and repaired. According to the Michigan Association for Local Public Health, local jurisdictions with a point of sale or time of transfer septic ordinance find that 17 to 25% of systems evaluated need repairs. The Watershed Center has engaged with and been a resource for several local governments discussing such ordinances, including participating in the county's ad hoc committee. And we recognize the value of these ordinances at the county level to ensure consistency and clarity throughout the county's jurisdiction. And we applaud you for getting involved in this important water quality and public health topic. We also greatly appreciate the hard work of the staff of the health department that they dedicated to ensuring the proposed regulation was clear, feasible, and enforceable. Regulatory tools that support inspections and proper maintenance provide great community benefit, and we view the county's proposed regulation as a good first step towards ensuring our drinking and surface waters are protected. The Watershed Center looks forward to continued engagement with the county, offering our expertise and resources as you see fit. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
My name is William Stott. I reside in Peninsula Township. As a former, and I'm also here on behalf of the League. As a former bacteriologist and toxicologist, I urge you to adopt this motion or this regulation. It is critical to safe drinking water, should be basically a no-brainer. We also had a saying in bacteriology anyway, that one person's effluent is another person's drinking water. The more barriers you can get between those 2 points, the better. And one of the first barriers is a functional septic system, and any effort to control the efficiency of that septic system would be very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Connor Miller. I'm a resident in Garfield Township, and I'm also employed with Aspire North Realtors, which is located in the city of Traverse City. So first, I wanted to thank the Grand Traverse County Health Department and the Grand Traverse County Commission for your consideration of an on-site wastewater and sewage disposal regulation. I'm reminded often that the preservation and protection, and I was this morning, of our region's water resources, forest, and natural areas is one of the few things that truly unites us who live in Northwest Michigan. So I thank you for continuing to make this protection and preservation of our environment a priority. So previously, on behalf of Aspire North Realtors, I provided public comment at the meeting on February 19th discussing this with some detailed amendments. We had a 3-page letter which we provided to the Health Department and to the County Commission, and I just wanted to reiterate some of those points on that, but these amendments were provided by our membership, representing many years of experience on local septic regulations from across our region. These amendments will help to increase the transparency, support greater compliance, and provide greater efficiency. Some of these specific items include defining items like a wetland, area of known water quality concern, establishing standards for water sample collection, a time frame for certification of inspection evaluation reports, a time frame for review of corrective action plans, allowance of financial options for on-site wastewater and sewage disposal system repairs to support the ability of our county's most vulnerable to afford to repair their systems. And also clarification on how proof of a corrective action plan can be provided to the health department officials in a timely manner to ensure compliance and corrective actions to protect citizens and our environment, while understanding that proposed corrective actions in many cases will be dependent on the availability and expediency of private inspection companies. So finally, I would just like to stress the importance of the need for clarification to the general public, including our Realtor membership, of the properties that will be affected by this proposed regulation. We would propose that this be done through mapping and potentially a database, identifying all properties located within 300 feet of surface water. This will be especially important as owners are likely not aware of their proximity to many of the wetlands in Grand Traverse County, and which in the current regulation is defined as a surface water under these regulations. So these are just a few of the items we would like to see updated in the Grand Traverse County regulations, and we look forward to working with the Health Department and the County Commission on these next steps. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Greg Palezza. I'm in East Bay Township. I'm a Spider Lake riparian, and I applaud the efforts to protect our groundwater and our surface waters with this regulation. However, I wonder if it maybe is just codifying what's already going to occur for a vast majority of these properties, as you know, property values now on our lake, at least, even for a very modest cottage, you know, you spend about $500,000 for a small residence and upwards of $1 million. If I was going to be purchasing a property of that magnitude, certainly I would do my due diligence and ascertain the adequacy of the septic systems. So at least a majority, I would think, of the properties that are affected by this are going to be already inspected by either the seller prepping the property for sale or by the buyer who is going to do their due diligence. I've undertaken the start of a septic survey around our lake, and I have noticed some interesting data from the Grand Traverse County septic records that is available online, and 27% of the properties around the area that I've surveyed on Spider Lake so far have no available records for us to review. 8 of the properties, or 11% of about the 15% that I've looked at, 8 of the properties have dry wells, which are antiquated systems, and about 14% of the properties have systems that are from the 1970s or approaching 50 years old, where another 12% are at least 40 years old. So there's a vast majority of properties that are at risk for contributing to negative water quality. And I applaud our first efforts here, but I think we need to consider, you know, doing a lot better. You know, Wisconsin has a state septic code that requires either inspection or pumping on every 3 years. I would anticipate that the great state of Michigan and the progressive county of Grand Traverse has the resources, manpower, and expertise to be able to protect the, you know, groundwater, our environment, as well as, you know, the health and safety of its citizens. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just like the bad penny, back again. My name's Tony Ansorgi. In reviewing the discussion of the proposed Grand Traverse County regulation for the inspection of on-site wastewater and sewage disposal systems at time of transfer of property, property transfer, there are several misconceptions that should be clarified. The first is the often cited statement that Michigan does not have a uniform septic code. What should be cited is that the Drinking Water and Environmental Health Division of Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, EGLE, has minimum design and construction standards for septic systems that are required to be enforced by all local health departments. The current standards are published in Michigan criteria for subsurface sewage disposal, which includes the following. Quote, the document contains very specific requirements which certified local health departments are expected to follow for making decisions on proposals of less than 10,000 gallons per day. In this way, the Commission is pre-approving the proposals of less than 10,000 gallons per day. In this way, the Commission is pre-approving proposals which meets these very specific criteria, and certified local health departments act as a screening agency to determine if the conditions adopted by the commissions are met. Local health departments do not have the authority to approve proposals which do not meet this criteria except through variance provisions included in the criteria, end quote. Local health departments are not making up their own minimum rules or standards. Local health departments do have the ability to add or exceed the minimum standards set by the state, as they are proposing to do in this case by adding an inspection regulation. Our local health department is not making up their own rules and standards, but exceeding the minimum standards set by the state. If there's any confusion over this, I suggest asking the local health department officials present here today if this is true or not. I would note that the proposed state legislative bills do not change the role of the local health departments, but simply expand what is required at the state level. The second misconception is that there is a health problem with the existing regulations and septic systems in Grand Traverse County, and we must therefore make a change. Without repeating my entire previous comments to this board, I will simply state the conclusion. We have a comprehensive required reporting system of any septic-related sickness or deaths by a whole range of pathogens by all health providers, hospitals, and public health officials. Over the last 50 years, there have been no local incidents and only a handful for the entire state of people getting sick from septic systems. No one is getting seriously sick from problematic septic systems. You want me to stop?
To give Bonnie you know what, seeing that you gave us a letter to put on the record, and the folks here don't have one, I'd like you to finish your letter, please.
Implementing the proposed regulation will not improve the already stellar record of septic system health performance. If there's any confusion over this, I suggest you actually ask the local health department officials if there's any existing problem of people becoming sick from septic systems, or if there has ever been a single case anywhere in the state where implementing an inspection regulation has resulted in documenting a case of someone who becomes sick from a septic system. The third misconception is that implementing a time of property transfer inspection ordinance has been a success for wherever it has been implemented. It is already clear that implementing such a regulation will not improve the nearly perfect record of lack of documented sickness or death from septic systems. What you may not know is that there are other locations that have implemented such a regulation, but then rescinded the regulation later after objections from their community. Kalkaska County Commissioners voted to rescind their ordinance, but because they have a 10-county district health department, they have to get all the other 9 counties to agree to let them opt out. There is still one other county that has not yet allowed them to opt out. The Barry Eaton District Health Department rescinded their time of sale or transfer ordinance after 10 years because of community dissatisfaction. Not everyone is a fan of time of property transfer ordinances, and their drawbacks can eventually lead some to decide that they are not worth the cost of keeping them. Have you reviewed the reasons other locations have rescinded their ordinances? The last misconception I would like to raise is that the cost to the taxpayer is always worth it if there's even a slight chance of improvement somewhere. While I respect that the health department officials would always opt for the maximum regulations for the best chance of improving the public health, that is not your role in passing regulations. I would use the emergency medical transport field as an analogy. If we wanted to give every patient the best chance of survival after an accident or medical emergency, we would staff every ambulance with an emergency room trauma doctor and nurses with all the emergency room equipment. We don't do this in real life because it's simply not cost effective. Yes, it would probably save some lives, but at the expense of other social priorities. One of your primary roles is that of being a fiduciary of the public's money. As elected officials, it is expected that you will always do a cost-benefit analysis for every potential board action. Is it worth the expected cost to the taxpayer of approximately $330,000 a year for no decrease in documented sickness or death? If we're not improving the health of the public in a documentable way, why would we want to do it? What benefit do we expect to be able to document by doing inspections other than to say we did X number of inspections? The existing septic system regulations already provide a documented, safe, and a cost-effective method of protecting the public from disease and pollution. If you feel there is a need to address a potential human waste pollution problem, then you'd be much more effective to address the problem of millions of gallons of documented undertreated soil sewage spills and overflows from municipal wastewater treatment plants throughout the state, including our own. That is where there are documented cases of illness and death from past incidents. In closing, I do not support the proposed regulation of septic system inspections simply because there's not a documented benefit for the associated costs to the taxpayers. Thank you for consideration of this perspective.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for allowing that. Did you get one of these, Bonnie? By all means. Any more for public comment? Once, twice, thrice, close the public hearing? At 9:40. Anyone, comments, questions, or concerns? Commissioner Nelson?
I do have a question for staff. On page 2, under I, so OWSDS, says it shall mean on-site water and sewage disposal system. So if there's any structure that has a, we'll call it a gray water dispersal, like a dry well or something that's different than the sewage separate, is that going to fall under this ordinance?
Do I need to state my name again?
Sure.
Brent Wheat, Grand Traverse County Environmental Health Director. Under our existing septic code, gray water is not a thing. That's all considered sewage, considered wastewater, so that would fall under that, yes.
That's a consistent, that's staying
Yes.
the same.
Yep.
Okay.
Any other questions? Mr. Andrews?
Thank you. Brent, while you're there, it looks like from Aspire North's letter that they sent in February that they provided, and to Mr. Connor's comments, but by my count, there were 4 requests to add definitions. And one, basically, as I read it, a request to remove a term that's not used from the definitions, which the Board of Health, it's not used anywhere else, it shouldn't be in the definition, it just creates opportunity for confusion. It seems to me that adding definitions, definition of wetland, definition of area of concern, definition of available, and the definition of what is corrective action would be straightforward terms that the Board of Public Health can find commonly accepted or statutory or regulatory definitions of those, and add them into this draft without having to go through another one of public hearing or anything else. Is that a fair summary?
I thought we received some very fair comments from Flow and Aspire North. One of the big one was changing the title from having the word inspection to evaluation. That was also something we spoke with Dan Thorell and Benzie Leelanau about. It just helps clarify some things, and it helps create standard language with the draft statewide septic code as well. I felt that the comments from Aspire North, I agree with that. I think that we could add some definitions in there. Another one was defining what wastewater is. That was identified as being left out. So I think that some of these comments were really good, and further clarifying some things and definitions would be helpful. Now, whether or not you guys feel that we need another public hearing for that would be, it's up to you guys.
I mean, legally, I guess, and I'm seeing a head shaking from our public health director that we wouldn't need to go necessarily through a public hearing process to make those sorts of edits. Relatedly, the Aspire North asked for clarification on the timelines for the amount of time for a certification of the inspection and the amount of time for some corrective action. It seems to me that those, from a public implementation perspective, would be helpful to know. Are we talking 3 weeks or 3 months, or whenever we get around to it? And I suspect that that's also something that, while you might, as the Public Health Department, want as much time as possible, there's some reasonable ranges that could be provided so that at least the public knows what the universe is of how long it's going to take to get that report back.
Yeah, I do have some concerns over our ability to know that right off the bat with how long it takes to get some water samples back for us to review those. So to just come up with a week or 2 weeks right off the top of my head would be, I think, kind of difficult right off the bat, but could maybe be further implemented through procedures, unless we feel that it needs to be added into the regulation.
So I'm interpreting the request, and this is the section VC4. Can the department provide a time frame for how many days certification of an inspection evaluation will be completed? So by my understanding, the amount of time SOS takes to take the analytical sample, get the results, and ship it back is before it even comes to the health department. We're talking about the timeline once the health department gets that certification. Is there a number we could put on there, a fair and reasonable number, acknowledging that these are moving issues, may need further tweaking, but it seems like Benzie and Leelanau could provide some ranges of how long does it take them to do it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yep. And to help provide some clarification too, in the regulation, it refers to department guidelines, right? So the department, under that regulation, can adjust and write those guidelines on a year-to-year basis using the input from private industry and partners in the community. And we do not then have to take this regulation back to the board for continuous adjustment to the language. So the input we received was those department guidelines, which there's a lot of work to do if this regulation is passed. But that is really that support document for our realtor agencies and things of that, about some of those definitions as well. Definitions belong, I agree with the comments here. There can be some clarity provided in the regulation around definitions, but those department guidelines will really be an instructional tool on how we implement this in the community, and some of those pass-throughs and timelines. It's difficult to narrow that down, right? Mr. Wheat's team is very busy right now. The grass is green, so everyone's ready to start building and to start moving soil. So I want to be cognizant of that for this team as we step into this and create a new program.
Something I noticed too is that a lot of the comments mentioned in that definition of surface water, that word wetland, and really what it means. The purpose of including that was really to capture, shallow ponds and things that hold water for greater than 6 months. It wasn't really to say wetlands in general. And I think that Connor brought up a great point in his comments, that it would be difficult for us to provide clarity for the general community as to whether an inspection is needed or not with homes just surrounding wetlands in general. This is really geared towards surface water right now. And with that, I think it would be easier for us to meet some of those requests that Aspire North wants, as far as working with our GIS department to come up with maybe a list of properties who would require an inspection if it was to be sold.
It seems to me like we've got two issues in front of us. One is, what ordinance language is this body going to be presented with on May 21st for potential adoption? And then I think that's almost like the beginning of a process, which is the public education, the public-facing identification of potential parcels. What are the rules? What is a one-pager that the realtors can share easily with people who are subject to this, so that they all very clearly understand generally what the process is. And I understand that if I'm you, that is sort of phase two. First, let's make sure that we've got an ordinance that provides us with the framework, and then how are we going to implement it? We've got a 6-month window, 7-month window before it goes into effect. That feels like a long time, but I'm guessing from the health department's perspective, it's not a long time. But my perspective is, if you can add some definitions and meet Aspire to the extent you are comfortable meeting them without changing substantively, who's subject to this, what the standards are that we're going to apply, what the general obligation is of the county and the different parties and the inspectors. It seems like those are reasonable and should be included. We've had it 2 months to sit with this set of edits, and if we can get that before in a month, it seems like a reasonable request.
And
Commissioner Spence.
thanks.
Thanks for this. I did see a lot of overlap. I looked at Aspire North's letter, an East Bay Township letter, and a two-person letter that you have shared. Those edits and their redlining on this proposal, there's some overlap. And I think that if you identify those common denominators that are based on good data, I think it'll help get the language clarified. So I think that I can see it happening by May. And then I've used in the past point data with geo-referencing to find certain points of interest in GIS mapping, so I can see where this section 3N, where we're talking about surface water that's above ground for more than 6 months, I think that that can be identified. It might not be perfect, but by using point data and capturing those areas, it can change and be improved upon. So thanks for putting this together, and I guess my comment is that I hope that you'll look at these common denominators in these letters that have come in that you've shared with us and use those as reference for clearing up the language.
Absolutely, thank you.
Anybody else? TJ? Commissioner Andrew? Commissioner McAllister?
As a riparian, I think it's a good idea.
I just wanted to acknowledge, I didn't catch Ms. Gregg's last name from East Bay, but I do acknowledge, and I think we've talked about this in the past, that we have some real holes in our data. We know, I thought the number was about 5,000 out of 25,000 systems that we don't have. We know there's a septic system. We don't have the data for it, especially when we have those data gaps around our water courses, our inland lakes. That is a real problem. By not talking about that in this ordinance, that doesn't mean that we don't understand that that's a problem, that we're not going to try to do something about it. There is a problem there to the extent there are lake associations who are helping do that, and there could be some process where we can compile that data and help fill those gaps. I don't think anybody at this table is arguing that we should pretend like that's not a problem. We definitely need to address. Those are probably some of the most high-risk systems in our community, potentially, if we don't even know where they are.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I would welcome a proposal in the next budget cycle for a way to address that, whether it's with health department, grant funding to lake associations, or consultancy, or otherwise. I'm just one of 9.
Yeah, I think we talked about that before.
We have.
Hoping for that.
Absolutely. It's a good idea. All right. Mr. Wheat, Mr. Lay, anything?
I would just say thank you to this board and thank you to the public. Appreciate the input in the suggestions from this board. This board is our Board of Health, right? So I believe it's our roles as your health department and this community's health department to put these matters in front of you all, to make some decisions and give some direction for us to go forth and implement in the community. So I really appreciate the conversation and the public for taking time to give some input. So with that, we will see you in May.
Sounds great. I'd also like to thank the public for being here today and taking time out of their schedules to comment. Appreciate it. We'll move on to 5B.
You have to close out the public hearing.
I did at 9:40. But thank you.
Kept going though, so.
We don't have to be part of the public.
We're overachievers.
I've confirmed with Council, she's willing to get through Project Alpha.
Yeah.
We discussed.
Sure. You want to take a break for 5 minutes, do we?
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
They already
I
did.
guess we're gonna go.
They're like ahead of the curve.
Everybody's leaving.
Who needs a chair?
You're late, sorry.
Always funny what brings people in.
My Apple Watch is telling me it's time to stand up and walk around.
So you want to do that right now?
together, please.
It's a necessary service.
Baby, right?
Yeah.
All right, we're, oops.
Stargate.
Look at that. I hear Commissioner Walter in my head saying, speak into the mic. Scarred.
It's Lloyd, yeah.
It's
I don't
Lloyd?
want- I don't want Lloyd to come after me, so.
Well, I appreciate both your all's efforts. So now we're going to move on to 5B, Project Alpha Progress Update. Mr. Forsythe, if you
Yeah.
please.
So I'd just like to introduce Jerry Tomczyk and Bobby Poplinski with Cunningham Limp. So they're here today to go over the plans, the budget, and the various documents in your packet, and also answer any questions you may have about the project to this date. So go ahead, guys.
Yeah. Good morning.
Good morning.
Bobby Poplinski. I'm the CFO and Executive Vice President of Cunningham Limp in Northwest Michigan. We're based here in Traverse City. With me today, as Chris mentioned, we have Jerry Tomczak. He's our Director of Operations here in Northwest Michigan. As you may remember, Jerry's been coming in, provide monthly updates on the progress that we've made on Project Alpha. Today, in lieu of that kind of standard monthly update, today we're going to go through and present with the current schematic design plans that have been prepared for both the ECC and EOC building, as well as the central storage facility. In addition, we will then also review the schematic design budget that's been prepared for both of those projects that have been prepared by Cunningham Limp. This is kind of the first milestone for both the design and budgeting process for the project. As we go through this process, we will have continued ongoing budgeting efforts from this point forward that will continue to update the budget as we go, as the drawings continue to progress. But from here on out, we will then have two more kind of main milestones in this process as we go through the design development process, and then ultimately into the construction drawings process, at which time we will both have budgets that will be prepared in order to review through that process. So in a minute here, Jerry will come forward and go through the specifics of both the schematic design plans for both buildings, as well as talk through the budgets that have been prepared for both of the buildings. But first, I just want to spend a couple minutes to walk through the steps of the process of how we've gotten to this point today. So after Project Alpha was approved by the board, Cunningham Limp was then onboarded to partner with the county to go through this process. The first step in the process from there was to go through a competitive selection process to bring on the correct design team for the project. Through that competitive selection process, we selected Partners in Architecture, who was then brought forward to the board, and they were approved to come on board as the design team. Once we had the design team ready, we then went through the programming phase. The programming phase for the project was a several-week process where we interviewed the staff, the department leaders, the team that's been put together to head up the Project Alpha. In addition, we went through site visits and saw all of the current facilities for the county. And we then carried on weekly and bi-weekly meetings to be able to talk through the programming requirements for the ECC and EOC building, as well as the central storage facility. Once the programming requirements were completed, which have been included within the packet that's been provided, we then were able to develop an initial site plan and floor plan for the project that would incorporate all of the necessary programming requirements that have come out of the programming phase. With that initial site plan and floor plan, we then went through a refinement process and took feedback from the department leaders, the board in some scenarios, and were able to develop what we now have as this initial schematic design plan that has been presented today. as well as a site plan that would incorporate those schematic design plans for both buildings. Once we then had the schematic design plans together, Cunningham Limp was then able to prepare this initial schematic design budget that we're here to prepare to walk through today. So Jerry's going to go through the specifics on both the schematic design plans as well as our budget, and we'll be willing to answer questions on anything specific from that. As I said, this is the first milestone for checking in on a budget. There'll be continued budgeting efforts from this point on, as well as continued refinement of the drawings and the plans as we continue to make decisions on various things like value engineering, incorporating things that may not be on the schematic design now, but we do feel is necessary for part of the project, as well as potentially revise and eliminate things that may be unnecessary for the project. This current schematic design budget reflects the current market conditions for the material, the labor, the trends based on Cunningham Limp's extensive knowledge on construction pricing for very similar projects that we've been doing recently. While the packet that we're providing is a high-level summary of both the building cost and the site cost, we have gone through and we do have a full breakdown of all major components for all scopes of work that comprise of that summary number that's there. And we do have that. It's just one of those things as we're going to go through a competitive bidding process. One of those things that starting with the high-level summary is the right step now. That provides us the ability as we go through and competitively bid this out that we're not disclosing any confidential information or assumptions of what the various scopes of work will cost. Further, although eventually we will get to the point of going through and doing a full competitive bidding process for all scopes of the work for this project to subcontractors to bring in the lowest, most qualified bidder for all scopes of the work. That's not this step in the phase. A lot of this is internal knowledge that Cunningham Limp has based on pricing, but because of the extent of the plans that have been prepared today, we have been able to go out and provide some sub-qualification for some of the major components of the buildings that have been designed to this point. So there are some subcontractor qualification and backup for the numbers that we have today. So with that, I will turn it over to Jerry to go through the specifics on the plans and the budgeting. Is there any questions of the process of how we've gotten here today before Jerry steps in?
Anyone?
Okay.
Thank you.
Morning, Commissioners. I'd like to thank some of the Project Alpha subcommittee members that are present here in the audience. Chris, John, Rob, Corey, Greg, Jenny. They've been instrumental, along with Nate and Chris, in helping us through the process of where we're at to date. So included in the package is quite a bit of information for you, approximately 60 pages. First item that's in there is the site plan. I've referenced this before. This is architectural site plan that PIA, Partners in Architecture, prepared for the project. Since then, we've turned it over to Monument Engineers. Mike Rademacher is also present here in the audience. He's a civil engineer. They've prepared the preliminary site plan. We just received the site plan from him. We'll review it, but in essence, it's what you see here. It includes the necessary road improvements, the central storage facility, which is about at the center point. We reworked the drive to make sure it's linear. It goes back to then towards the east side of the site where we have the EOC, ECC, 911 dispatch facility. So the square footage of the EOC, we met with some of the subcommittee members of the commission to discuss where we were at and where we're now. At one time, we were at about 15,500 square feet. It was expressed by this board that that was a bit much. So we went back, refined the square footage for it, got it down to about 13,200, 13,300, I'd round up. And we met with some of the committee members to discuss the reasons why. Back when FMP was done by Tower Pinkster, it was approximated at about 9,000 square foot. But I don't think at that point they were including the mechanical or the electrical components that needed to be stored inside the facility. We now have building codes that require that for that facility at a 200 mile per hour wind, that facility has to have the infrastructure inside the building protected. So there's a premium to pay with that. There's no question about it. And that adds up to about 4,000 or 5,000 square foot of the total footprint. So that's probably one of the major issues that was discussed earlier on that has to be inside the building. The new codes have been implemented and they require that we do have to do that for this facility. The central storage facility did go down in size from what the original FMTP design was. I think at one time it was anywhere between 50 and 53,000. We have since reduced that down to about 27,500 square feet. The reason we did that, of course, was because a major component, the DPW, was no longer part of the project. It was obviously discussed at previous meetings that we were anticipating they were going to be, so we took them out. They were roughly about 11,000 square foot of the total space. So I'll walk through. You can ask any questions. We'll try and answer as best we can. But you'll notice on the site plan what we have here. We've highlighted the areas that wouldn't be part of this first phase because eventually the master plan shows that something would happen to the south of that drive. The county does own land there. Could be considered for a jail, could be considered for other buildings. We don't know at this point. But what we want to make sure is that we've earmarked land for the future development. And most importantly, we're extending the infrastructure as part of this phase for that future development. So we've extended the sewer and the water as part of our total cost for doing this project right now. We've also considered the fact that if both projects were to be done simultaneously, we could save dollars. We don't have it yet, but we know there would be economy of scale. You wouldn't have to pay twice to have a superintendent, a PM on the site. We'd have some general condition savings. But right now, for the budgets, we've gone ahead and said that they were two independent budgets, two independent projects. Therefore, all of the staffing, general conditions we assigned with each of these projects. Walking through the plans, we've got the floor plan for the CSF, which is the central storage facility. Again, it's about roughly 27,500 square feet in size. It does have characteristics that were necessary for a pre-engineered building, which is standard pre-constructed, off-site, brought in as pieces, and it's big erector set, basically. We've added to it some additional flat roof designs. It would be masonry constructed, it would be metal liner panel, it would have all of the necessary components for that building to also withstand 90 miles per hour. So we want that infrastructure to remain in place, obviously during an emergency, because there's reasons why. Inside that facility, we're going to have the facility management staff, their vehicles. There's even an emergency vehicle that would be housed there for the EOC in that facility. This is just some different elevations of what it would look like. We'll discuss some of the value engineering deducts you might want to consider for both buildings in a moment. I'm just kind of walking through them. This next building is the EOC building. So that was the one that at one time I mentioned earlier was 15,500. It's now been downsized to 13,300. We've got the floor plans associated with it. Up there in the top left-hand side, that red area, you'll notice that we've got both the HVAC and the generator. There's actually two generators for this facility. You have to have, obviously, very functional during an emergency need. That's all contained inside that facility. So it includes the dispatch, 911, includes a training facility, and 4 emergency meetings in the event it's activated. Then we have some supporting conference rooms, some office space, gang bathrooms, and front entry. This is the elevation of what we would propose that facility to look like. It includes the sloped roof. The building itself, characteristics include it's a precast concrete, I've mentioned before. The walls, the roof, solid concrete planking. It would have insulated metal walls. We're currently doing it on another project, and it obviously has the ability to withstand 200 mile per hour wind loads. And you have to not only consider the lateral forces, but the potential for uplift when you have a tornado. So that entire roof, that sloped roof, is precast concrete. And then it's just covered with roofing membrane. We do want to look at a value engineering alternate to change that to a flat roof design. There's some significant dollar savings with it, but right now, as it stands, the budget does have this in there as a sloped roof. Here's a few other elevations for it. And then here's the floor plan that originally was the 15,500 square foot for your reference. Any questions at this point regarding the two floor plans or elevations?
My apologies, Commissioner Nelson. Taking notes.
Can you briefly touch on the changes you made when you went from the 15.5 to the 13.285 and how you made those choices?
Yes. Well, it suggested downsizing one of the conference room, removing that, removing a couple of the offices. We also had we had a wellness center that we removed. We would like to propose to bring that back if we could, because of obviously the concerns that if it's deployed and that facility is active, you could have people there for 3 days, you could have them there for 2 weeks. And they obviously are concerned that having a person in that building for that extended period of time, they might need some breakout areas to go and decompress. So that was one of the areas that we also removed from it.
One of the biggest parts that came down to lower the square footage is the peach color off to the right side, which was the training room. That was one of the bigger square footages that was removed. We have had discussions about what brought down the square footage and what specifically came out, the wellness room, things like showers, the lobby and training room area. After we went through that process, there have been discussions of, okay, we were able to bring down the square footage, but some of the things that were removed during that process are things that should remain based on them to be able to operate within that building during emergencies, having the ability to have a wellness room, have the ability to take a shower if you're working a long shift. Those things have been discussed to come back in. But even still in this scenario, to find that happy medium of reducing from the 15,500, but be able to incorporate that back in. If we're not looking at the large training room that's off to the right side of this floor plan as you're looking at it, that could be the type of happy medium that you get in between to incorporate those necessities back in, but also have a reduced square footage.
And as referenced, we did take out a couple of the offices too, so the purple areas. But you'll see a comparison of the 13,300 square foot to the 15,500 square foot building in your package. Go ahead.
Before you do that, TJ, hold on. So Jerry, part of the conversation we had earlier, and if you said this earlier, I apologize for missing it.
No problem.
So at either one of these floor plans, to talk about reduction in square footage, so we're thinking, oh, it's gonna reduce a lot of money. The dollar figure between the first floor plan and the second floor plan in savings is like $1 million. That's like the mass of the amount of expense, and I want them to share with you, is the pink area where all the HVACs, the emergency generator and all that stuff's gotta be in the building. That's the vast majority of the cost of building. So while we were hoping to save some money, shrinking the footprint, it really wasn't that. So there's some other things.
The request to shrink the size of the building was based on cost savings.
Correct.
So it's anywhere between $750,000 to $1 million if we were to add back in that 1,500 square foot.
Commissioner Andrews.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Sharon.
you. So one of the things you've raised is the slope of the roof, and I think there's there's some savings associated with flat versus slope roof on the EOC. Does the slope or pitch or non-slope flat impact the ability to put a green roof? Do you need a flat roof to be a green roof?
You would. So if we were to consider the flat roof design, we could add the green roof to it.
And you might come out, I think there was $1 million number associated with pitch.
Correct.
If you were flat and you would add some cost for the installation, but you would also potentially reduce the amount of stormwater and the size of retention and otherwise.
Right. And you'll notice on this site, we're not limited to the area to the extent you see in a lot of the other developments, the smaller lots. So we're proposing we're going to have on-site detention above ground and some underground detention. But to consider the green roof, yeah, you do want to have a flat roof to it. So the flat roof would be an add of approximately 250,000 to 300,000.
I thought it was a
250 to
residential.
350.
The green roof was
For
an
the
ad.
green.
Yeah.
It's
you
an
said
ad.
the flat roof.
Sorry.
The green roof is an ad, but the savings on
roof
a
is-
pitch roof is a net, so it's,
It would be a net positive to go from the slope to the flat roof, even if adding in a green roof.
Right.
and that's just on the EOC building.
That's
What,
correct.
what is the opportunity, if any, to do green on the central storage building?
We certainly could.
Parts of it, at least.
Yep. You'll notice on this elevation right here, Ms. Andrews, that flat area that's to the left could be one consideration. With regard to the green roof on the EOC, with that being a concrete roof, solid planking, it certainly can support. We would probably have to do a little bit of additional supporting on this one for the central storage, but again, within the range that we've identified.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions before we move on?
Sorry, Mr. Nelson.
So then, what are the advantages of the sloped roof? Or is there,
Aesthetically, it really just comes down to aesthetics. Some people prefer sloped roofs. It does match the character of the area that's out there, but again, the EOC 911 facility sits back much further. But again, we're on to address the appeal to try and do something that was characteristic of the area. Obviously, snow melts faster off a sloped roof than it does off a flat. Both are certainly able, we see a lot of flat roofs in our buildings throughout this county, so it can support what we want to do.
Great question, Commissioner Nelson. Commissioner Walter.
Yeah, just following up, because the sloped versus flat and the green roof conversation was mostly about the EOC, but what kind of cost savings are we looking at for the central storage facility, changing that to a flat roof with a green roof?
You're probably not going to save any money on that one. The
Okay,
reason
just
being,
'cause
it's a
it's a
pre-engineered building. I think we could take the slope down slightly. Right now, I think it's a 4 to 12 slope. We could take it down to a 1 to 12. Still have the ability. A lot of pre-engineered buildings are constructed with even half-inch per foot in slope. But I think if anything, we might want to consider doing more of the building with a pre-engineered than with conventional steel for the flat roof designs. So that should be something we were certain to talk about, but in the end, it just comes down to having conventional steel building, flat roof design to it, would probably cost more than the pre-engineered with the sloped roof.
Are there efficiency benefits from one construction method versus the other?
There are, and the reason being, a pre-engineered building's been pre-engineered, so it's already been worked out for each of the loads. So typically, you find the cost on that to be cheaper than it would be for conventional.
Sorry, let me use a different term. Are there energy efficiency benefits to the, either of the construction methods on the interior? Is one have a higher R value or whatever the terminology?
You can always add more insulation to a pre-engineered building to meet the equivalence of what it would be for conventional, for any of the architects or any of the others that might be present. It really comes down to the ability to insulate the building. What's the most effective way to do it? We do a lot of pre-engineered buildings with an R50 on ceilings, walls at R35, 40. So it's certainly able to do it. The ASHRAE standards, the building code standards that we have out there, dictate that we have to meet at least a minimum. So we'll have to comply with that, and we can always add more to it.
So I have a question. So if we change the square footage just a little bit, and we save $1 million, and we can make the roof flat and save $1 million, to me, that's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we can still aesthetically make it look beautiful, you know, and still get some square footage, maybe a little bit of reduction on that, and still have everything inside that we need. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, except that we think that at least my perspective is that a wellness center does seem like a need, not a want, in a facility like this, given the nature of the events it's being planned to address.
And showers definitely for sure as well.
Showers and space for that. So to Commissioner McAllister's point, yes, we could save that million, but I think there's somewhere between the original version and the refined version that's less than $1 million that gets us a wellness center, showers in there.
And I agree, and I think that green space with all the seats in it, you could probably just squeeze that out.
Fair enough. Where you grab from to create that, I think, is a separate.
Well, I think we can do it. So when they say it's not that much money, it's $1 million, last time I checked my bank account, that'd be pretty nice to have if we could get it.
Agreed.
We just, as Commissioner Andrews was pointing out, it won't be $1 million because there does need to be a middle ground there to be able to incorporate the necessities back in. So it'll be somewhere in between the.
Well, my point was when I said it's not in the term of the whole project, $1 million off an $18 million project.
I think we're at a $30 million project?
I'm just talking about the one building we're talking about.
Okay, let's.
I ain't got to the other building yet. Commissioner Henschel, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation, for all your work, and, this is the nitty-gritty part where we gotta, push and pull. I guess big picture would be, what is the effective life expectancy of this building once completed?
The EOC building?
Yes.
Oh, definitely 75+ years.
Okay, so for 75 years potentially, this is our EOC building. 75 years ago, what was the population of Grand Traverse County?
Too high?
12,000.
And 75 years from now, giving those trends, half of what it is today.
Easily half. if
Easily
not
half.
less.
Given those trends, looking forward maybe 50 years, not even 75, are we building the building for decades from now, or are we building the building for yesterday?
I think it's decades, certainly be my opinion. It all depends on, obviously, the population growth, like you've referenced. I think ultimately it comes down to, we've provided for the ability for them to function in here. It would be nice to have a few extra square feet. There's also room available on the site for expansion.
Okay. Is that something that, as you put this together, hey, maybe a module could go here? Looking, say we're at 250,000 people 30 years from now, 50 years from now, looking at counties of that size, what does their EOC look like? What are they struggling with when their buildings for space and facilities? So those are just the kind of questions I want to make sure we're addressing as we look at the bigger picture.
Be nice if we get some input from the person that would be, I think, either Corey or Greg, the ones that are going to be living in this facility. They've certainly expressed their concerns.
Maybe both.
Yeah, that'd be great to hear from you.
So I can only speak to 911. So currently our capacity is 6 people are able to be taking calls, dispatching at any given time. That's already low for us if you include trainees who have to sit there and learn on the job too. So that's usually 2+. So we're already at the point where we're kicking people out that need to still be working there. As far as population trends, if we just keep growing at 1% in 50 years, that'll put us around 158,000 people. And so why that's important for 911 is that's generally what your call volume is per year. Across the country, if your population is 100,000, you get 100,000 calls per year. And so that means that our people are taking about 6,000 calls a year. And so if we keep that trend, I'm going to need to have about 31 people working in 50 years. Well, I won't. I'll be dead and gone. But there'll need to be 31 people working in the center. With 10 positions, we can manage that. It's going to be a tight squeeze in 50 years. So I would say that this is future-proof. If we keep going up about 1% a year, we could probably handle this 50 years into the future just in the 10-position 911 center. The problem is the more people you have and the more calls you have, the more support staff you need. So somebody needs to be supervising these folks. Somebody needs to be listening back to the calls. National standards require at least at a minimum 2% of calls have a quality assurance review. And we're at 1% right now just because I don't have enough people to do that right now. So that's just going to exacerbate. So I'm going to need more middle management staff as the county keeps growing and the calls keep coming in. And then the other thing to think about there is the fact that cell phones are already stupid complicated compared to how they were 10 years ago. That's not going to get any better. So we're going to need more and more technical staff so we can keep up with this. Right now, a 911 call taker, just to take your 911 call in an emergency, is juggling 14 different software programs at once. That's going to get worse. And all those things have a tendency to break all the time. I was working until 8 o'clock last night with something that broke. We just need more technical staff and more supervisory quality assurance staff that go along with that. So the actual operational area, just to kind of sum it up for me, I think that's about 50 years proof. We could probably get by with that, but we're a little thin on locations for middle management and technical people.
Thank you.
have a follow-up question, Corey, if you've got a sec. When, as I understand it, our population may be about 100,000 now on an average day in April, but in July, our numbers are substantially higher than that, and it's my understanding that 911 already accommodates a much higher capacity in the seasons. Does the fact that we are already somewhat designing around a peak need as opposed to an average need build in some space for, I mean, is that right? That we are building knowing what the demands are in the summer high months?
Yeah, in our current, with this current design, we could accommodate peak needs like during Cherry Festival. Now, when a plane crashes on the Civic Center, not that that would ever happen, but if a plane crashes on the Civic Center, there's no way. I could have 20 people answering calls and we don't have enough. So in those critical events, it's just impossible to handle those, and we have some backups. So Leelanau is going to be taking our calls, and CCE is going to be taking some of our calls, those kinds of things. But as far as peak seasonal call volume, this schematic would allow us to accommodate that because we're going to need 8 or 9 people answering calls at that time. Right now, we're getting around that because, again, I only have 6 positions. So we set up a mobile command that just takes calls in the city, especially in the Cherry Festival area. So I have 2 extra people working over at the command center. They're going to be taking 911 calls this year, even down there. And we'll be able to get by now. So that's our interim solution right now. This new design being able to, I kind of think of it as an accordion. Sometimes you have to expand out, and sometimes you have to expand in. This will allow us to expand out quite a bit more for those peak seasons. Because just like I said, population goes up, calls go up, our calls quadruple during Cherry Festival.
To that point, additional office space, to the extent we're adding a wellness room, additional office space is probably the lowest additional cost we can add in terms of square footage, right? I mean, I don't think any of us want to see a request for an expansion to this building in 10 years, right? So, and sorry, I just have one question that Commissioner Henschel's question raised. When we're looking at a building that's designed to withstand 75 years or to be standing for 75 years, it seems to me that that's an excellent reason to also be looking at energy efficiency and energy supply, our HVAC systems over that long period of time. Especially the return, and this is a general question for Cunningham Limp, the air-to-air exchangers, geothermal, those sorts of systems. When we look at it for a building that's designed to be future-proof for 75 years, I've got to believe the math pencils out in terms of the operational savings and the utility savings, the bills that we're paying.
Absolutely.
At what point in the process do we see that analysis?
We can evaluate what we call a life cycle, look at a piece of equipment, determine based on what the manufacturer tells us. Mechanical units, if they're kept inside, you're going to get a longer life with it. There's no question about that. But mechanical units are also designed for outside use. I think in the end, a mechanical unit, if you were to get 25, 30 years out of it, you're doing pretty good for forced air. If we look at other options like the geothermal, we've given some alternates in the budget we'll go through in a moment. I think you'll find that that's even got a longer life to it. There was some discussion earlier on about heat pump units. I haven't seen enough data to support how long a heat pump unit would work, but I assume it will for an extended period of time. If you go away from gas-fired, which I would certainly strongly encourage, we got to remember there's going to be additional operating costs, electricity costs for running that heat pump system. But it does work, and that's something we will evaluate.
I just want to make sure we're not foreclosing those options as we're at any point at this conversation.
No, we still have the opportunity to design mechanical, electrical, even the plumbing. That's, definitely something we'll consider. Did you want to hear from Greg regarding any concerns?
Well, Greg, you got anything you want to add?
So Cliff gave me some numbers while I was standing back there. In 1950, 75 years ago, the population was 20,000.
Wow.
And in the summertime, when we're at peak event season, it can go 1 million, 1.5 million, 2 million for, especially with coming in the events. So the thought process of designing a robust, resilient, able to stand the worst case scenario we could think of for the next 75 years was challenging. going back to even before I came here 12 years ago, it seems like emergency management has been funneled around different buildings about every 10 years because they outgrow the space. They suffer from space not being adequate, not being secure or hardened. Currently, with 2 FTEs, the second FTE doesn't have an office. And so the new build with the smaller footprint only encompasses the current staffing. It does not encompass, in 2020, we had auxiliary amateur radio, which is an important part. If you've read about the ice storm, they suffered with getting that staff to be able to fill when redundant or when robust immediate communications failed. We don't have any space. We had to get rid of them during COVID to make room for PPE. They're no longer a footprint in the current EOC. One of the envisioning parts, it's hard to envision 75 years down the road, but how could we do today and not seem like we were wasting space or wasting money, and that was to have multi-purpose locations. So be able to bring them back into the footprint, but future in conceivability, if emergency management grows again, then there's another office for future growth, or there's a way to split that office. We also struggle, and Corey didn't mention it, but we struggle day to day. These aren't just empty rooms sitting here. We have public safety agencies that use our rooms weekly and monthly for meetings, for briefings, for training. We're now starting to get trainings here that historically, even back when I was hired 12 years ago, I had to go to Lansing or Detroit to get trainings. We're now starting to draw those trainings here, which those aren't necessarily costs that we think about, but it saves personnel, travel, and expenses by having them here. The problem is our current space, which fits 50 people, we've outgrown it. There's a need right now for school safety training. They want 100 seats, so we either have to rent someplace or we have to beg, borrow, and steal someplace. We don't have a place to have media briefings. And so a lot of that original footprint was envisioned to have multi-purpose, flexible space that in a very large disaster, we could add things like removable walls that could give us that adequate space to operate for weeks on time and grow and contract as we needed, but also on a daily, weekly basis to build a robust and something for the public safety needs of the entire county that would serve a secure, hardened facility. So that's what I have.
If I could ask, Mr. Byrd, the school safety trainings you put on, is there a security risk element to disseminating the information that you train these people with, that if you were to rent a hotel room, a conference room, you don't know who's listening through the walls to it, basically how you're handling situations?
Some, and specifically what I'm talking about is the State Police Office of School Safety doing behavioral threat analysis training. They contact their emergency management and school safety partners, and they're looking for regional places for up to 100. The next one is going to have to be, they're going to have to rent or look at renting, and they're looking for places to give it free. We've offered that. They wanted to house it. We simply didn't have the big enough room. And that's just one example. Some of the other training is sensitive to where to bring it in there. But on the same note, last night we hosted annual National Weather Service training, and we had to have a public-facing location, and we had to shut down early because the location closed. And so we weren't able to host public. And this facility with some of the stuff that got cut, that was that public safing that would also be like a media briefing, a local officials briefing course that we could make part of the secure but would stand open to the public. So again, those are just quick examples of how Corey and Jason, when Jason was here, how we envisioned this grand scheme of things to actually give us a building that every 10 years we're not looking at. We need to move or we need to add on or something like that, because that wasn't what we wanted to do.
Thank you, Director.
So before we get to the budget, I just have a question about the storage facility building. Is the schematic that's on page 3, does that include, it looks to me like there's 3 potential tenants. There's our facilities department, there's Commission on Aging, and there's DPW drawn out in the packet.
Okay, but the DPW we eliminated from the floor plan.
So the floor plan does not show, okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
And is that true of the budget too?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I follow?
Go.
I think it's important to clarify this isn't for the entire Commission on Aging. This is for a part of the Commission on Aging. This is just for the outdoor services component, and it keeps getting repeated that this is for Commission on Aging. So this is like a piece of the Commission on Aging's work. There's still a need. The Commission on Aging has a 3-year lease to share space with the Area Agency on Aging. none of those people are going to be here. So there's still a long-term need for something else to happen with Commission on Aging. So just know, as we're talking about this, don't be surprised, we're going to talk about Commission on Aging again someday as we talk about facilities. So this is just a piece of their services.
Some equipment, right? Some of their equipment?
Quite a bit of.
Well, and their people right now, you know, they're in this design, they're in, I'm looking at Commission on Aging, they can
They're
speak to
looking
that
for the
too.
luxury of heated offices.
Or really an office at all to do their work. There's pretty sad state that they're in right now when they need to do that, but sure. Do you want to share just what the piece of this covers within the context of Commission on Aging?
Sure. Hi, so Lana Payne, Director of Commission on Aging. So this is for our outdoor services crew only. So every office staff and all that, as you said, will still stay on Park Drive. So these are the folks who do our lawn care services, our snow removal services, and they all have county trucks, plows, trailers, equipment, mowers, a lot of equipment. Right now, we currently have 7 employees. We have our own garage right now on that just houses really 6 vehicles, and it's on Keystone. And then we also have been able to use the old animal control building. That is the building where they have like desk work area right now for those 7 employees, and we are completely full. We have not been able to grow that program because we don't have a large enough facility to put any more equipment, vehicles, or staff. So this plan is based on growing that group from 7 to 10. And so all of the parking that you see is 10 vehicles, 10 trailers, plus extra, because we usually have 1 or 2 spares. Right now, 1. With 10 folks, we might need more spares, but we keep a spare truck and a spare trailer during that time.
Sorry if you just said this, but do your outdoor service staff have office space at the animal shelter space that you're leasing, or are they sort of living in their trucks kind of a situation?
They have desks in that area. It's a very old building. They're right next to the kennels. We just stuffed desks in everywhere we could so they each could have a spot to do their paperwork and work on their routes.
And this, what we're looking at in front of us, does have at least the equivalent, if not more, space for their staff in the conditioned space?
Yes, in that southern portion, there's a room specifically for that. It's just got countertop all the way around, and we've made that so that there should be room for 10 of them to come in with their tablets and spread out and work.
That's the report writing?
Yes, the report writing room, yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Spence, you had your hand up.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I just wanted to say, I don't think the square footage from my perspective is an issue. I know that there's been a lot of trying to sell the 1,500,000 square foot floor plan. I think we talked about cost benefit analysis, and I think that from my own perspective, I feel like it's validated for the wellness room. And I just want to say I have some prior medical experience, having worked in our emergency room in different capacities ever since. There was one trauma room at Munson Medical Center that was separated with a curtain. So we've come a long way with population growth, and I get it. And I know that we'll need to make this building transitional to grow as our community grows. I think what I really wanted to talk about today was, as we move into the operations of the Project Alpha building, I looked it up this morning before the meeting. It's a 3 to 7 year payback. If you put in geothermal, the initial cost will be more expensive, but it's been shown to pay for itself between 3 to 7 years. So I'd like to emphasize that. And I did speak with the technician for 911, one of our technicians, who told me that a bench fee for turning a radio into Motorola is going to be $700 just to send it in, and there's quite a cost savings to our county when this technician can fix radios on site. So there's the technician's maintenance room next to their office, and I think that's a huge benefit to us, because anytime something has to be sent out, there's a much higher cost involved with sending that out. So I think that this floor plan's been well designed by Cunningham Limp, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Commissioner Walter.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you had more you wanted to share before we got deeper into budget, but I did want to look at the site plan again with you. The last time you were here, we talked about better pedestrian connectivity between the buildings, and I don't see any changes to the site plan based on that conversation.
Right. Again, this is the PIA architectural plan. We'll modify and make sure we refine to accommodate in the monument engineering civil drawings for pedestrian access.
When will we see those changes, you think?
We could see those. Mike just sent me a draft. I would anticipate in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure it wasn't forgotten in the
Nope.
the very complicated project, as we've seen many times when we don't speak up multiple times. Sometimes things
Gets
get
slipped.
forgotten, and then it's too late to add things in. So just want to make sure that's included. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Gary?
Certainly. So continuing through all of the information you have, we've also included the programming. It was referenced many times before. You wanted to see the information. You wanted to see the data. How did we get to where we were at? So this is the backup. Many meetings, Bobby mentioned earlier, PIA, Cunningham Limp, the subcommittee members had discussions with department heads, identified what needed to be included. So this spreadsheet just shows you, for example, with the central storage facility, how did we come up with what we have today in front of us? It does include the DPW in the programming because, again, this was done back last year. At that time, we were considering the DPW. But now that they're out, you would just disregard that information, and we have the additional information that's supported in the program. I won't walk through all of this. You'll have it available. If you have questions, I certainly can try to do my best. This was something PIA was helping us with. Then there's also the EOC ECC program. That's also the next attachment. And it includes the information that was relative for our discussions. I think the biggest one we wanted to get into today was the budgeting. So we did do a robust schematic design, very detailed estimate, as Bobby referenced earlier. We'd prefer not to release that information right now only because it's going to jeopardize the integrity of competitively bidding. For example, I'll just use electrician. If we had plugged $1.5 million, I'm just using this hypothetically. If that's out there, when we competitively bid this, let's say there's someone out there that's at 1.2 million. Well, he may or she may decide to bump their number to 1.5. We'd prefer to make it competitive. It makes for an honest, transparent method. So we instead propose the range in the budget. So you'll notice on your sheet for this schematic design budget estimate, we've identified a range. We gave you some backup of detail for the site, between $910,000 to $1 million for the central storage. The building itself would be 2.7 to 11.8 for the range. We then identified some contingency. These are dollars that are set aside for, it could be unforeseen, it could be just changes that happen. It's nice to always have a contingency there. If it's not used, then it's returned. But we draw from that contingency to use for things so that we don't have to keep coming back and asking for change orders or approvals to modify a budget.
That contingency also, because as I was saying, we're in our first milestone of this design and budgeting phase. That contingency starts based on that assumption. As we continue to refine these drawings and get more specific information, that contingency can be looked at closer to be able to bring that down, because you'll have less unknowns of what we're going to uncover as a necessity as we refine those drawings. So that number is just a starting point from this first milestone, and that'll be revised down as we go through the process.
We've also then given you the cost associated with, or the budget for the EOC ECC. Site work, $740,000 to $815,000 for that. The building itself, almost $13 million to about $14.3 for the range, along with contingency dollars. We then identify some green energy options to consider. The geothermal, as expressed earlier, If we went that route, that could be a $350,000, $450,000 add. The solar panels, those could be ground mounted. I'm working right now with Beta on their new solar panels that they're going to put on the roof, but you can have them on the ground. You don't have to have them on the roof. And theirs is around an $800,000 budget for 320 kilowatts of energy that they're going to provide. For green roof, as referenced earlier, that could be anywhere between $250,000 and $350,000. And then I mentioned back at the beginning, if we considered running both projects simultaneously, we would save money there. Was there a question, Mr. Nelson?
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Nelson, please.
If possible, I would like to see not just, like in the green energy options, not just the cost associated with the installation, but if and what the savings will be, break-even point, and then going forward, because it's, you know, if it's $10 million to add something, but you're saving $20 million within 5 years, you know, obvious, but
Absolutely.
Because that doesn't give me enough information to know whether that's a viable option or not.
And just to give you as a reference for the solar panels, the materials are becoming less expensive, lighter weight, longer life expectancy. I think we determined for the Beta project it was between a 7 and 8 year return on investment. For them, they're immediately getting the return because they got a grant.
Right.
So, but that kind of gives you the indication. Certainly we can provide for that, Mr. Nelson.
That'll give me the full picture as opposed to.
Absolutely. Here's a few other alternates that aren't included in the budgets above. We already talked about consideration if you wanted to do the flat roof over the EOC. That could save anywhere between 1.1 and 1.25 million. Right now we have these protective barriers in front of the EOC so someone can't ram into the building. Those were constructed of concrete or something equal. We could consider going to like landscape boulders and saving money there. There is no requirement that it has to be built out of concrete. So we could set boulders as a perfect example and save money. If we added that 1,500 square foot into the EOC building, we're looking at an add of about $750,000 to $1 million. And then we also provided for, Mr. Seifert suggested maybe doing a well backup. And if we went to a water well, private water well, we would then have to put in a tank for the fire suppression system and a pump. So that's between $250,000 and $300,000 for that on the EOC building. We've also listed below things that aren't included in those budgets above. We always like to be totally inclusive or clarify anything that's not. So these are the exclusions that right now we have. Our owner-up position, that's not included above. We did provide for an option if we were considering hiring us to be the CM on the project. There would be a deduct on that fee. Any of the design engineering costs aren't included. If there wasn't any environmental remediation, we don't anticipate there will be. We did that study with Otwell Mawbey earlier on. Remember that discussion back last year? There wasn't anything that concerned us about potential for contaminants that were on the soils that we would have to remediate. Lightning protection system, if you wanted to put some type of antennas for lightning protection. We don't commonly see it in the area, but if it was something you wanted, we could do that. This whole sewer water situation assessment, if there's tap fees, benefit fees, REUs, those are all just different names that are used for it. That hasn't been included because we're hoping that it's an essential government agency and maybe we could get some reduced fees. We don't know, but certainly something we want to consider. And then the fixtures, furniture, equipment, appliances, we call it FF&E, has not been included, or the builder's risk, which is protective insurance that the owner typically carries. Any questions regarding the budget?
Commissioner Andrews.
I'm sure everyone read the ticker this morning. A year ago, we had a memo, I think it was April 17th, in our packet from staff, and it estimated the cost of the project total 11 to 15 million, and that was at a storage facility with 20,000 square feet. We're at about half that, and the price is triple, bottom line. Is there a way we can see where, because I mean, and this doesn't, and that number, the 11 to 15, were included in the high and low range numbers, as I understand it, whereas the numbers in front of us today don't include some of those soft numbers. So I'm curious as to where we went wrong, how a 50,000 square, 20,000 square foot facility with the central storage facility was at 4 to 6 million, and now we're looking at 12 to 13 million in particular for half as big a building. Where did the math go wrong, right? It's half as big and it's twice as much.
I would have to go back and look at what that memo was back in April, but certainly when the FMP Tower Pinkster budget numbers were presented, the EOC at 9,000 square foot had a total, plus then they had breakout for generator, breakout for site.
Yep.
And then the central storage was a separate number altogether.
Yeah, it looks to me like it's mostly the central storage that's, I mean, both are more expensive, but I understand that moving the generators underneath, behind the walls and sort of thicker walls, if you put it simply, is going to drive some of that cost, but that's not really what's driving the central storage facility. And the numbers, that's where the change in square footage has been substantially reduced due to DPW not being part of the project. And yet, it doesn't look like there's any savings that we're seeing. And I would like for us, at least as a forensic exercise, to understand where the numbers went wrong. And I don't think, frankly, I don't believe those numbers came from Cunningham Limp. Those were numbers that staff put together. They don't quite match what Tower Pinkster gave us, but Tower Pinkster assured us that it was based on their extensive experience and knowledge of costs and estimates in construction, as you have as well, and it just concerns me if we bid this out and it's another 50% higher or 100% higher, it just becomes a really expensive storage facility.
The Tower Pinkster would have gone through, in their capacity of providing, architectural services and an FMP, they're going to provide budgeting numbers based on the last relevant project they would have been involved in, which already makes their numbers, dated at that point that they're bringing it together. Cunningham Limp, we're continually working on projects that are very similar to this. So we have the up-to-date unit costs for all of this information necessary to build this type of building. So we're basing ours on the current unit prices, the current cost to construct this type of building versus, a Tower Pinkster would have been basing it on their last relevant project, which when they design it, it's at the beginning of the project, then you have to go construct it and go through that process. By the time that building's completed and they know what that costs are, that's already 2 years dated typically at that point. So that's often what we see when we're talking about the difference between an architectural budget versus a construction manager budget. We have the most up-to-date relevant pricing that's continually updated based on the feedback we're getting from subcontractors that are going to perform these services. On the other side of that too is when you look at the budgeting information that Tower Pinkster provided, between the overall project, we're right in the same level of overall cost between the two projects. Yes, one has a little bit up, one has a little bit down. Overall, our budgeting ends up being pretty similar, despite the fact that we're 2 years removed from when they provided a budgeting effort. So, and then the overall increase in cost for construction that has increased over 2 years, that is encouraging that we've been able to stay within that range. Going back to the estimate of 11 to 15 million that I believe you pointed out, again, I don't know where that number comes from, but at no point post-COVID would we ever expect that a building that would be 50,000 square feet could be constructed for sub $80 a square foot. So again, I'm not quite sure where those numbers came from, but definitely on the realistic side of what Tower Pinkster put together versus what we've put together today, we are very confident in our high-level estimate of this project.
I appreciate that. Just for the record, I don't want to mislead anybody. The proposal on April 17th was 20,000 square foot at $220 to $302 per square foot. It was, and that was a $4 to $6 million building.
Okay.
As opposed to the 50,000 square foot building that Tower Pinkster originally envisioned, and that one was an 11 to 16 million.
I see.
So that one is on par price-wise with where we are now, but that was a 50,000 square foot, and now we're at 11,000. So we've shrunk by 3/4.
Yeah, we're not at 11,000 for the central storage, though. Our central storage is 27,000 square feet.
So then, so when we look at, I'm looking at the page in the packet, maybe we should,
Sure.
where it outlines the breakdown of the central storage building. Let me see where it's at. I'm looking at page 14 of 53. And it's got the breakout of the different spaces in the CSF, 14 of 53, so it's way up. It's those small tables with the, how much space does each entity need?
33 of 125.
Oh, was it the programming? Was it part of the programming?
Yeah, project program outline. On the bottom, it says page 4 of 5. Yep, keep going up.
Yep.
Scrolling.
Trying
That
to-
one's, yep,
I need to know.
easier said than done.
I think I'm stuck.
I think that's this one, right?
Yeah, that's the EOC.
I think that's in
That's
this
the redacted version, the unreadable version. Yep, that's the page. So when I'm looking at that, I see COA, DPW, and DFM. Commission on Aging, Department of Public Works, DFM is the Department of Facilities Management's total is 22. If you take out DPW, the next line is 11,051, and then there's 1,000 square foot for some other space and another little bit of space for, so that's where I'm coming. And then if you look again on the next page, again, you see including DFM is 25, DPW, excluding DPW is 12.
I would have to go back and look at that, Ms. Andrews, I'm not sure. All I know is that with the refined floor plan we did for the central storage without DPW, we were at the 27,500 square feet.
Well, that's interesting, because the table certainly shows that a huge chunk of the 25,000 is DPW.
Yep.
To remember that the programming information was done last year, and then that is the starting point where you get your site plan started, and then as you refine that and build that into your schematic design process, you're continuing to refine what the programming requirements are, but you're not necessarily going back retroactively to programming information that was in here. At that point, you're beyond that step, and you're going to get to the point of schematic drawing, and that's going to be what's incorporated. So, doing the numbers on here was based on the numbers last year. As we've gotten to the point of having full schematic design to incorporate everything that was necessary, we're at 27,000 square feet.
But, so I'm just trying to make sure we understand, because if you scroll back up to a couple of pages where it shows what is, and as I understood it, the question is, what does the Commission on Aging need? And there's a page, and it shows all of their, number of
There, right here.
vehicles, number
Page
of
5
everything.
of 5.
Yeah, and they need 4,030 square feet. And obviously, they need way more than that, is what I'm now understanding. So,
27.9, you got building area total of COA and DFM, covered vehicle storage is 15,288, 27,000. Outdoor storage is 3,000.
okay.
DPW was another 12 on top of that, it looks like.
Okay, so the covered vehicle storage is separate than the
The covered vehicle storage is incorporated. If you're going back to the floor plan that you're looking at, for central storage,
It's all part of that 27,500 square feet.
Okay, so covered vehicle storage is a separate portion of the Commission on Aging section. So they've got both an interior is 4,000 and the exterior is 7,000.
Certainly sounds
Okay.
like that.
So then my question is Commission on Aging, if it's say 50% of the project cost, and this is a staff question, and same for EOC and 911, it looks like call it 50-50, right? Half of the building is 911, half of the building is EOC. On storage, it's maybe half is Commission on Aging and half is facilities management. Are those Commission on Aging, which has a millage fund, and 911, which has a 911 surcharge, are we looking at them paying 50% of the costs for each of those
No.
buildings?
No,
No?
it's actually, we can use the surcharge more than 50%. We know that. So we know that we can charge a lot of the infrastructure costs to the surcharge the way the buildings are laid out. And we know, as we explained to the Commission on Aging Advisory Board, is, yes, a portion of the project will be charged to the millage, but it will be done, it'll be amortized over the life of whatever bonds are issued to support the project.
And do we, I mean, are we envisioning a study session? Because it's like, what does it cost is half the equation. How are we going to pay for it is a completely different question that I expect the board is interested to hear about. Do we anticipate that as a deep dive, sort of like we're doing here?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have a timeline for that?
As soon as you would like it, we're ready to go.
Any other questions regarding the budget numbers?
Anyone?
I'll just briefly
Commissioners?
review. We also included as part of the package, and we don't have to go through it all right this minute, but there is a summary specification that we provided. It provides all of the detail to support how we came up with the numbers we have. So it was very clear and concise. We didn't want you to have to guess, did we include landscaping? Did we include this many doors? That is all part of the specifications. And that's the last part of it, along with the schedule. If we were approved to proceed with the next phase of design at one of the next commission meetings, then we could then release PIA to start the design development, which is the DD design. There'll be time allocated for them to prepare those documents. That's between the 50 and 60% set. And then we'll use that to prepare our next budget estimate, which would then be more detailed. It would allow for subcontractor input.
It would also be during that design development phase that we're going to start incorporating the cost-benefit analysis of things like geothermal as you're requesting. You incorporate the things like the site plan, pedestrian walk. We reincorporate the things that we're taking out for square footage of wellness and showers, things like that. That's the step that we start reincorporating, further redefine those drawings, provide the cost-benefit analysis of the green roof, when that pays for itself, if that's a worthy investment to make right now. Obviously, we know the potential for environmental factors that it has, but what is the cost-benefit analysis as well? And you work with those subcontractors that have the ability to perform that work. They have the necessary information to be able to say, here's how long it's going to take for that to pay for itself. If it's going to cost $400,000 to put in a geothermal system, here's when we reach that point of savings. So all of those things that, very great questions right now, all of that starts to get flushed out as we go through the design development phase.
Thank you. Any more questions?
What type of timeline do you anticipate having the refined budget?
Jerry, do you want to go to the very last page? We did include a timeline with benchmarks.
And we could walk through some of just the milestones. If we were approved to begin the DD, we'd hope to have that started May 8th for the approval. We could then move to have the bidding started in July, mid-July, with board presentation sometime in 1st of August. That's approved, then we move into what we call the construction documents, the CD, which would be September, with us bidding the final for November, 1st of November. We could actually start construction if approved to move forward with the project the first of next year, with anticipated about 12 months of duration for construction. Does that answer your question, Nate?
Yes, thank you. I'm looking to schedule a meeting to discuss how we pay for something, and I think knowing the cost is critical.
100%.
Is there any other questions you might have?
I'm going to guess not. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Presentation.
Thank you.
So we are kind of in a spot, I believe, where we need to change the order of our agenda. My apologies. We need to go into closed session to accommodate our council. And I recommend that we do that. Need
I
a
move to
motion?
go into closed session.
Can we table the second?
Thank you.
Well, but we,
Hold on.
Per-
Go ahead,
per-
ask a question.
okay, per the memo, it looks like we're going to have a joint meeting on May 14th. I wonder if the facilities master plan study session could be picked up at the first May study session so that we've had that conversation ahead of the joint meeting with the city? Is that, do we have anything else scheduled for the May
8th,
8th, sorry.
no, 7th. 8th is a Thursday.
7th is a regular meeting, the 14th is a
Oh, yeah, the 1st is on Thursday.
Let's just come back and
Okay.
listen to it
All right,
today. All right, so all those in favor?
Wait, is the
Roll call.
motion to go into closed session per the agenda, because there's a special language for the motion to go into a closed session?
Absolutely.
There you go.
I'll accept that friendly amendment.
Roll call vote, please.
Flynn?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Spence?
Yes.
Henschel?
Yes.
Nelson?
Yes.
Andrews?
Yes.
Morris? Yes. McAllister?
Yes.
Seifert?
Yes.
I can back up after.
It's not you I'm worried about.
Clearly. Oh, okay, all right. But we have to get council for these two right now. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Ashley?
Yeah.
file. That's what we ought to do, is just receive and file, because we're meeting with the city in 2 weeks.
I think we should have a 15 or 20 minute discussion,
conversation about it,
even if it's,
Wow,
even though it's kind of old
Well, if that's what you want to do, we'll table it.
Yeah, I would like to.
And as we move forward, 2 topics for study
Or it's
session.
not really,
Ms. Andrews.
it's not necessarily tabling, we're just postponing it to the next meeting, tabling.
The next study session or the next meeting? How do you want it?
well,
Next meeting.
How do you want it?
Did they have to leave?
Back into closed session, or open session.
And we're going to come back in from closed session, back into open session, 11:48 a.m.
so moved.
Support.
Here, here.
So obviously, we're going to put this on hold, and whatever the language
Voice
needs to
vote.
be to manage that, we can do.
We're going to do roll call.
We need to vote to come
roll
back
call.
into open
Sorry.
session.
You ready? It needs to be roll call too, doesn't it?
Nope.
No?
Voice
All in
vote.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. All right.
So we understand. What we need to do, though, is we need to sit down and have a bigger discussion about what does this process look like, not Project Alpha, but the bigger plan that we're discussing. We've made the first decision on a jail to create a steering committee, and there are steps that we have to take to get to and through that process, to include discussions about where is the jail going to be, and all of that takes time and effort. So, and we need guidance from the board as to kind of what direction are we going to go. So we can postpone it. We just know that we have to have a larger discussion about the bigger concept of an FMP, who goes where, how does that impact the Gov Center, how does it impact the city, how does it impact the county. So May 14th is that joint meeting with city and county to talk about this building specifically. And we will have Tower Pinkster here to walk through their facilities assessment with us as a group. And so that would certainly be helpful information to have to discuss this.
Well, make the motion to postpone this discussion to the May 7th regular meeting, because I think it would be helpful to have the ability to vote on some things too.
I'll second that. But we could, well, if we tabled it, you would have to see it at the 7th, right?
No, tabling means it's indefinite.
It's indefinite,
That's
yeah.
why I put a specific date on it.
I don't think that's accurate, but
Okay.
am I right?
So tabling applies to a motion on the floor.
Okay.
In our board rules, we have the option to defer to a future date. So basically, if you make a motion saying, we want this on the calendar, or on the agenda for this meeting at this date, everybody votes on it, that's what we do.
Thank you.
That's the motion on the table.
I second it. So we have a motion from Commissioner Walter, a second by Commissioner Seifert to postpone this until the next meeting, which is on the 7th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
One other point, so this squelching is a result of, this is the new IT room for the city. It's a server room, so that requires a lot of cooling. So the noise that you're hearing is the cooling efforts on their server units. John and Cliff are both exploring opportunities to quiet that down.
Then why it's so
Yeah.
cold in here?
Hugely distracting.
Is that noise cannot
Oh,
continue
it's,
every meeting?
we didn't know that was coming, number one. Cliff has some ideas that, in terms of configuration, that we can solve it, so we're working on that. It's very annoying.
Update on that. I'm glad it wasn't just me
Yeah, I thought it
hearing
was
things.
construction. but I'm glad I was corrected.
Thank you.
Turn down your miracle here.
Could we have a second public comment for?
Sure.
Anyone?
If you want. John?
All right, so any comments, questions, concerns? It's awesome, we're adjourned.